Welcome to the Next Mountain podcast, where we meet exited founders and leaders who turn major transitions into purpose and impact. Today, on Next Mountain, we're speaking with Duncan Grossart, founder of Journeys with Purpose. Duncan is driven by a lifelong conviction that we must restore our relationship with the natural world. With a zoology background and a career that spans award-winning entrepreneurship to hands-on conservation work, he brings together business acumen and ecological devotion in a way few leaders do. Before launching Journeys with Purpose, Duncan built and scaled a highly regarded photography business, a venture he grew from the ground up, navigated through the complexities of creative industry, and ultimately exited it successfully. That experience shaped him as a founder, commercially sharp, values anchored, and unafraid to reimagine what's possible. Today, he's channeling those skills towards rewilding and ecological restoration, helping people experience conservation landscapes in transformative and responsible way. In this conversation, Duncan takes us through his transition from entrepreneur to restoration advocate, a journey marked by curiosity, humility, and a drive to reconnect people with nature. He reflects on what it takes to leave a successful business behind, the mindset shift it requires to build a life around impact, and why community, collaboration, and immersive experiences are essential to creating a thriving world. Duncan reminds us that purpose isn't a destination but a relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the natural systems that sustain us. If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to follow or subscribe to Next Mountain wherever you're listening, and join us as we explore the path from success to stewardship. Without further ado, let's get started. So, hi, Duncan. Welcome to Next Mountain.
Thank you very much, Natalia. It's a pleasure to be here and with you as well, Marie-France.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you so much for being here. And before we start, would you share with us why this conversation is important for you?
So, I have so enjoyed getting to know you and meeting with you, Natalia, and learning about your own impact work and ambition around purpose-driven work. And so to be able to share stories with one another about how important it is to be led more by one's heart and balancing that out with utilizing one's skills and brain and head and so on. So I think to be able to share stories amongst one another is a really powerful way to transmit and empower other people in impact.
So, as we start, maybe we could start with your early life. You could tell us more about how, your early life shaped you and how what it led you to in terms of your career and now your mission.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it informs me as to what I do now is the early things that shaped me in my life. And I'm British. I'm based here in the UK, but there were really three things that shaped my early life as I grew up as a young boy and as a teenager. And those were being surrounded by the natural world in the UK and being in the countryside. The second thing is I was also involved and worked with horses and animals through my life. And I think that really fostered a sense of what is it to have a relationship with other life in the world, whether that be pets or horses or other wildlife and so on.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was I was lucky enough to be able to travel from a fairly early age. In my mid-teens, I was able to go to Africa, to Kenya in the mid-'80s. I went back to Zimbabwe, to Zambia. I went to Northwest India in the late '80s, in my late teens. And that really helped give me an initial understanding and joy and wonder of travel and experiences in the wild, because I was going to some pretty wild places. And that was incredibly lucky and privileged. So those were the three things that really gave me, when I reflect back on it now, a shaping of my life, and a relationship with the natural world, a relationship with other life, and travel as well, and experiences and understanding, and so enjoying the wonder of diversity and difference and exploring all these different wonderful places around the world and how precious they are.
I sense so much curiosity in you, driving behind that passion that you're sharing.
I'm so pleased you said that. Somebody who's really helped me in my life has really encouraged me to express that more recently. Curiosity, creativity, discovery, and you're absolutely right. I think I'm not sort of suffering from any boredom in life. I think it's endlessly curious and an endless adventure to explore.
Would you speak a bit more about what we call your first mountain? So, project work, whatever that was, and how that shaped you. But more importantly, why did you choose that first mountain? What was it about for you at that time?
Okay, so before I get there, I'll just say that, once I'd finished my upbringing, my academic career was in the natural sciences in the UK, and I did a master's degree as well. And in a way, when I look back on that, I was quite lucky to get through my degrees as well, because I was never a good student. I
Mm,
discovered far too late that I was somewhat dyslexic, and so
Mm,
studies were never that easy to me. I think social
yeah.
environments and visual communications were much more easy to me. So I finished my academic career. I had always also been interested in business because
Mhm.
I had seen, observed, and experienced wealth and success as I was growing up, and what it could do, the energy that it could provide for whatever realm one wanted to sort of deploy that for. It could be deployed for growing further business enterprises. It could be for leisure. It could be for impact. It could be philanthropy and so on like that. So I had an inbuilt ambition and drive to
Mhm.
understand the world of business. So my first principal part of my career and the mountain I climbed was in the commercial arena.
Yeah.
And that was in photography and owning and running and building a photography agency that became quite successful. We had offices in the UK, in Europe and North America, and international partners all over the world. And that taught me so many things about what it is to grow a business, what it is to grow a team, organizational design, working in the creative industries, visual communications, technology changes. We had a lot of international partners all over the world. And so I went through the phases of growing a business and scaling a business.
Did you start it, Duncan? Yeah. Did you
I,
start this business or?
yes, yes, I was very much from the early stage of really taking the kernel of an idea and
Mhm.
a start and bringing it to bring it to success basically.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic. Mhm.
I led that business, and it was enormously enjoyable, and it led me into joining several business networks. I joined Entrepreneurs Organization. I then migrated into Young Presidents Organization, or YPO.
Mhm.
And so, the business was scaling successfully. It was also a need for me to learn tools along the way, because I was a natural sciences graduate. I wasn't a business graduate. So I put myself on as many executive education courses as I could, networked as well as I could. So, talking about a mountain to climb, this was the mountain I was climbing, if you like, was using determination, persistence, drive, and ambition to build a business that became successful. So that was my first.
we are, but we're also interesting in those inflection points.
Mhm.
So a lot of people that listen to this or that we're working with are going through a certain transition in terms of either selling their business or exiting
Yep.
a role. So I'm just curious about how did that happen for you? Did like and how did you mostly how did you experience that?
How did you first think, this is the end of this mountain?
Okay, so the ambition had been to build an exit from a business, and
Okay.
that was the goal of it. So it was a very sort of goal driven environment in the commercial sense. I think there are two aspects to it. One is there was a point of exit for building that success.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, as any entrepreneur, as any business builder will know, is there are lots of obstacles and rocks and challenges along the way, and it is an emotional roller coaster. So not only have there been successes, but there have been failures along the way as well. There have been losses on a business levels and also on personal levels as well. And I have points in my life that I would never wish anyone to experience, including, the loss of family members. So it brings meaning to what is really important to me.
Mhm.
And I was reflecting as I went through that journey. I thought actively about what would be after what I do now.
Mm,
And I'd always been following environmental causes, environmental success. I'm a fellow of the Zoological Society of London, so I've always tracked conservation and natural world projects. And so the ambition had always been actually to come out at the other end and re-engage with sustainability and environment issues. And that wasn't a business plan. That was a
Mhm.
belief on
mm,
this was important to me personally. So that's was the sort of the next step, if you like. What I wanted to do, I didn't know. That was the next
Mhm.
journey. discovery, if you like.
You didn't know exactly what was that gonna look like. So how did that emerge? How did that, gave birth to what you're doing today?
So I really hear that experience, Marie France. I know as well, being a founder, owner, or entrepreneur. So I have a lot of peers in that arena as well. And some people really struggle with exits because the thing that they've been getting up in the morning for every day for their lives for 10, 15, 20 years is suddenly not there anymore. And that can be really tough and challenging. So I acknowledge that. What I did have is I had that line of sight ahead of me that was
Mm,
somewhat clouded and misty about what was important to me. So that helped me.
mm,
So in terms of your question around how long did it take to transition, it was pretty much straight away because a lot of
mm,
entrepreneurs are busy people. You know, by
mm,
nature,
Mhm. Yeah.
we get up in the morning and we think about what are we going to do today? And as someone described to me a year or so ago, is it's that constant balance between boredom and anxiety.
mm,
Where do we don't want to be bored, but we don't want to be in a world of anxiety as well. But we're
Mhm.
kind of feathering in that space all the time. And so I began straight away. I mean, I was looking at a number of different sectors and industries, anything from energy through to consulting, through to financial products and so on. But it did take me, it's not once, it took years to find my feet in where I
Mm.
think I can really play my A game for
Yeah.
others for the next mountain I'm climbing.
One of our theories of change is we want to help people that have this wonderful human contribution
Mm,
potential and steward it towards purpose, positive impact, and a heart driven
mm,
mission. So I love that you speak of that, that everything that you learn that you're putting into practice now with the journeys with purpose. And the other thing I wanted to point to is that forward vision that you already have is something we want to help people have, discover, find if they don't, right? So finishing their exit, they're surprised. They're like, ooh, I thought this was success. Yet they're still void. And so there's a big question mark for some. And we've found that having that forward vision of what we want to achieve for the next chapter, next
mhm.
mountain, is key to feeling grounded and maybe having that resilience to do the work of figuring out how, because that's not easy, right?
It's not easy. It's not easy. You know, you're making me think about what were the resources that I pulled on to help me figure it out.
Yeah.
And one of the things is I have a natural ability to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, like
Yeah.
mm,
we all do, or pretty much most of us, to keep exploring, always
Mhm.
curious, always having conversations
Yeah.
with people. So exploring what is out there. I think that is in this sort of the outer realm stretching beyond one's immediate network. But there is also the immediate network. There's friends, there's family. And of course, the good people are always the people that sit and listen and are sounding boards rather than step in and start giving advice. And they have been the dearest, most valuable resources and friends that I have. And if I can share anything with anyone out there, is finding those people who are brilliant listeners. For one, to be able to articulate thoughts, put structure to ideas, and so on. That's been a really valuable learning lesson for me and resource for me. And it
Yeah.
could be somebody that one knows, or it could be a complete stranger. It
mm,
doesn't really.
Yeah.
And then, those doors continue to open as you walk forward. Some people will have a very clear idea about what they might want to do, and it's a case of how do I approach and put that together?
Yeah.
Or other people may say, I've closed this chapter. I haven't had time to think about the future. I've reached this goal, but I'm not sure what's next. But I
Mhm.
think it's just keep having conversations with people and having support and help from people.
Yeah.
mm. One
Right.
thing that really comes through, and I can't wait to hear the second part of the story, is that you were always this 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 great love you have for animals, for nature, is something that you had already engaged with deeply through your early life and your study, and especially given that studying in the science, as you said, was not easy for you. So how, like, when you first were in that journey, did you spend more time engaging with that, or did you spend more time in nature, or did you take time to, or did you travel a lot? Like, how did that, and then maybe that, how did that lead into journeys with purpose?
Okay, so I was I was doing both. I'm a real believer that you get education in the classroom.
Mm.
So actually sitting down and learning technical skills and knowledge is really important. But I'm probably even more of a believer in education is outside the classroom. Travel is part of that, and that's obviously what I do now. And so it was getting a balance between continuing to explore the world and see what was out there, and having conversations close at home as well. I'm a huge believer in we are as good as the company we keep. And that means friends, that means our networks, that means our peer groups. When we're in a company, that means who we work with in our business. I mean, we all know this, is that in a business, we're really as good as the team we recruit and inspire. So spending time with good people and listening hard to what they're saying as well was a great sort of systems signposting for me.
And I think you spoke of a mindset shift that you've been going through. That's, I guess, you knew it from the beginning, but it's like it became deeper and deeper, how we're interconnected and dependent on the natural world. Do you want to share a little bit about that mindset shift, how it
So,
happened?
yeah, I mean, part of my upbringing was being absolutely devoted to natural history films. So
Yeah.
watching David Attenborough in the 1970s and 80s, and I remember, Life on Earth coming, onto our screens in the late 70s. I was also a huge fan of Jacques Cousteau. I think, in fact, my first pet was called Calypso after his research vessel, and
Nice.
and so I followed that story all the way through, and of course the narrative begins to change. I read it in newspapers. I see it on films. I see
Mhm.
the change in the language from David Attenborough saying we have this wonderful natural world, but it is imperiled. And we have many concerns in the world, if you like, from healthcare through to pollution and so on. But really, the two most significant, to me at least, and I think are the most significant, is how we are interacting with our land and our seas and our natural world, number one.
Mhm.
And the secondly is what is going on with climate change
Yeah.
and the science around that. Now, I do acknowledge that some people don't believe in climate change. I am uh, clearly approaching it from being a believer of the science, being a believer in warming temperatures. I'm experiencing it here in the southeast of England. It is warming here in the UK.
Yeah.
And so if you deeply care about something and love something from a micro level, from the birds in your neighborhood through to our life systems, then I want to get up and do something about it. Because David Attenborough is super clear on this in his documentary and in his book, which I believe is called A Life on Our Planet, or a Life on the Planet. Is it's down into two thirds, or rather he puts it into thirds. Is this has been my experience of my life in the first 95 years of my life. I've seen this change. I've gone back to the places that I went to 50 years ago. There is change occurring in a negative paradigm. The second third is if we continue on this trajectory, it only has one outcome. And
Mm.
then the third is what we can do something about it. Because
Mm.
I've never believed in saying, well, let's turn up and tell the bad stories. We've got to acknowledge them, we've got to confront them, and we've got to confront challenges. But let's get up in the morning and do something about it. So these were increasingly powerful triggers to say, okay, what can we do to mitigate climate change? What
Mhm.
can we do to mitigate biodiversity loss and change in our landscapes and seascapes? And so coming on to the sort of the story of what I do now was I began to engage with events and media on how can we reshape our conversation or relationship with the natural world. Particularly came to the fore when I began to understand this theme and this term of rewilding better. And we are in the UN decade of ecosystem restoration. So whether we call it regeneration or rewilding or restoration, it's a different terminology from protecting or sustaining what we have. And that was the motivating point for me, was actually saying, no, just looking after what we've got left is not good enough. Actually putting back together what we've lost in the extent that we can is the powerful aspect in this. And what I've seen is not just a growing interest in the theme of it, but it's almost become a movement now where people are super motivated to engage in the theme of rewilding, restoration, and so on and so forth. And I've had these wonderful kind of genesis stories that have helped navigate me to where I am now. And I think I shared this with you, Natalia, previously, the story of Doug and Chris Tompkins. Doug being the founder of North Face clothing in the 1960s, and then with his
Yeah.
first wife, Esprit, became a huge retail success in North America in the 80s and so on. Also, how he was was spending his spare time as a rock climber with friends like Yvon Chouinard, kayaking, skiing, and so on. And on the one instance, building a successful commercial enterprise and a commercial career. And on the other side, seeing changes in the habitats and the environments that he really cared deeply about. So having had all that success, sold out of all his business interests, and with his second wife, Chris, who'd been the CEO of Patagonia for 20 years, they moved to Chile in the early 90s. And Doug sadly died in a kayaking accident 10 years ago, but Chris continues the work. And over that 30-year plus period, they have created and enlarged national parks in Chile and Argentina now of 15 million acres and 30 million acres of marine reserves. And I just think this is incredibly inspiring how you can take billion-dollar corporate entrepreneurship and turn it into 10x billion-dollar impact and conservation entrepreneurship, utilizing all those commercial tools and knowledge and marketing skills to turn it into something super special. And it is about bringing back biodiversity and vibrancy into landscapes. It's bringing back wildlife, but it's bringing back pride in local communities and economics and jobs. And this is inspiring to me, and doing it at scale as well. So I started following this story, and then I followed other stories across all parts of the world. And I thought, this is fantastic. So how can I play my A game in this? Because these are some of the most exciting stories I've ever heard, but it's so undertold. So coming back to what I do now is that I'm a big believer in being heart-led. So what are the lessons I'm learning through life is that I've learned to trust my heart more. I've learned to care less about what other people think or what I think I should be doing with my time, trusting my own heart, trusting my own time, and saying, okay, I know what has shaped and motivated me, and that's direct experiences in the wild with these people as I've grown up, as I've gone through my decades. And so created Journeys with Purpose to build experiences in the wild with these brilliant people. So we call it remarkable people, projects or causes or deeds, remarkable places, all with remarkable purpose. So we can take groups of people out to go and see the work of Chris Tompkins and her teams in Chile and Argentina. We can go to North America, we can go to Africa, we can go to Europe, and we can show people what's possible beyond what they thought could be possible, and say, but it's not a spectator sport. You can get involved in this. You can contribute. You can contribute to the project work that we're visiting, or you can begin your own project work. It could be about fostering a greater sense of local community identity and welfare and diversity. It could be about fostering greater biodiversity resilience that helps local communities. And this is what is opening up ahead of us. So my great reward in all of this is I get to spend time with just brilliant people in the field. And also our guest profile as well, people that are inspiring in themselves. And that, as I said, is the reward that I get from what I do.
And in beautiful settings too.
Amazing. I mean, beautiful places in the world. But it's not, we're not, these are, these are really enjoyable. These are stories of success. We eat well, we drink well, we laugh well, but we're also learning huge amounts of information about how do you reintroduce jaguars into the wild? How do you foster a greater sense of community in the local people and cultural identity and pride?
I sense that, if I might, Duncan, because I sense that's key to the success of Journeys with Purpose, and maybe your purpose behind that, meaning going back to that curiosity you have, I think, and you bring to life, right? And so you're taking these people in this journey so that they continue to unpack, explore, learn. And you mentioned that in your own mindset shift, you went from a posture of conservation and maybe some traditional relation with nature and into a different way of being with nature and a different way of relating to it. So how I'm sensing that these trips allow for that shift in other people's as well. And maybe curiosity can give them, in their quest of finding that forward vision of themselves, some keys to how they can participate, how they can have a different posture. Yeah. How is my intuition right or wrong? How would you like to complement that as to how your Journeys with Purpose says purpose?
I clearly I'm well versed in what I do, but I really get an overall sense, and we are seeing it, quite frankly, in the economics, where people are shifting towards spending their time on understanding themselves and others better. It's
Mm.
experiences rather than possessions. And so what does wealth mean? What does luxury mean?
Hmm.
I think there
Yeah.
is a redefinition of that going on at the moment, and it's driven by younger people often.
Hmm.
You know, we have our time on this world, and I've come to believe that our well-being, our welfare is the sum of the parts of our positive relationships
Hmm.
with ourselves, with others, and with the natural world. It's acknowledging for me personally just how sentient other life is. So we have human rights, but we should also have animal rights, of which we do have some. But understanding that we are surrounded by other sentient creatures that have feelings and emotions and a role and an interconnectedness with us on this planet, and that actually play a role in our life systems as well. And that could be a functional role, it could be an emotional, mental role, whatever it may be. And so I'm trying to sort of think of trigger points of what are the hoops I've jumped through is further enlightenment of that, if you like. I know it's always been there because I've had a relationship with animals from an early
Yeah.
age, and you understand they have characters and emotions and so on.
Yeah.
So in terms of, sharing with other people through our conversation is keeping open, keeping curious. I'm very, very dedicated and clear on the vision of what we do, but I'm not saying that I'm absolutely certain about things either. Doubt plays a very powerful role to always be questioning and challenging what I'm doing, what other people are doing, challenging the paradigm. We don't have to put up with what the current trajectory we're on. Each of us are more powerful than we think. That's another lesson I've learned.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. It's interesting because you were mentioning rewilding and regeneration is also a term that Natalia and I initially bonded over and be like,
Mm,
what would that mean? And recently I heard somebody put it in context that, regenerating or rewilding our world is a multiple hundreds of years project. When we think about, the collapse of ecosystem and what it would take or what it will take, it could
mhm,
take to regrow that. And one of the things we're seeing, especially with entrepreneurs, and we've seen ourselves, is that in the world of entrepreneurship or building a business, usually it's a very quick loop of feedback loop where you make a decision, you execute on something, you get feedback, you have a P&L that you're managing on a day to day, or you have teams, or you have day to day, week to week, a quarter. But then when you think about the natural world, it moves, or even any complex system, they
mm,
move in a very different, on a different pace. And what I found is that you need to be able to drop into your direct experience, like you said, how to your head into your
mm,
heart, to be like, oh, I'm having an impact, but it's just that it's going to take decades. Or as you mentioned, the example of the Tompkins and their conservation
mm,
project. So I'm curious about your own experience with that, with all the projects you involve, and how do you get a sense that things
mm.
are moving in the right direction without that immediate kind of reward that a lot of people are kind of addicted to?
Yes, it's a really, really good question. What are our measures of success, if you like, along this journey? I'm personally absolutely motivated by working on projects that will outlive me. Brilliant, wonderful. Start planting trees that you'll never see grow to be mature. But I am lucky enough to have planted trees when I was younger, and I do see them at 30, 40 years old now, and it's brilliant. Yeah, that's a personal motivation for me. And I do know that people want to see a more of an immediate return. And the measures of success can be done along the way. We at Journeys of Purpose have our own mission 2030, if you like, about how we are going to measure our own impact. And that's involved around who we are going to partner with to measure the quantum of land and seas that we will help protect and restore. Um, and the great sense of reward and pride can come from that. We do have measurements around the amount of donations and impact investments we want to deploy into positive causes. And so you can milestone this along the way that shows genuine progression and success. So I think I would always challenge anyone who says, these are so long term, they're not going to sort of come to fruition in my lifetime. It's just not true. You can see successes along the way. I've been to Northeast Argentina, and I've seen them build this vast jaguar enclosure that looks like something out of Jurassic Park. And, when they started building that, it was a cage in the wild with nothing in it. And then, the year I was there, they'd released jaguars into the wild. Now there were 30 or 40 in this brand new 2 million acre national park in Corrientes in Argentina. And so it's pretty easy actually to measure your success along the way.
It's very.
But it's sorry to interrupt, Marie, but
No,
it's thinking of it in a different way. It's what are our measures of success, of happiness, of luxury, of so on. Because clearly one of the things that we can do as humans is we can make something look really good on a spreadsheet, but it can have catastrophic consequences to others around us. And
And
so,
even if they look good on a Excel sheet, they don't really like we've been society tells us those are the success, whatever
yeah,
criteria, but when achieved, they don't really bring any meaning or they're not really fulfilling.
yeah.
So that's one of our core, but yeah, go ahead, Duncan. Yeah.
No, sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say that's one of our core beliefs that to feel that you've had a fulfilled life, to feel more joy, to feel more happiness, it is about tuning into your heart, right? And looking at different criteria of success. Maybe more inwardly, because that's where maybe you have answers that honor life that runs through your veins, which might be very specific to you. In your case, that relationship to traveling and nature, but maybe it's different in someone else's blood. And so you've spoken about that quite a bit already. But I wonder if you address to those hikers, they're like exiting their first mountain and about to set up to think about a second one, maybe not there yet, maybe wondering what's happening and maybe surprised by the fact that those success markers are actually not fulfilling. What would you like to tell them? What would you like to, because you seem to kind of know already in your own path.
Well, one of the things we all realize as we go through life, the more we learn, the more we realize how little we do know. So I am sharing experiences. I have an endless encyclopedia to learn myself. I think there are lessons that I've taken along the way from people that I hugely respect, or they are self-learned through experiences. And this is personal to me. It's trying to sort of think of things that I can share with others that have helped navigate me to a place which gives me more motivation than I've ever had. It's given me raw rewards than I've ever had that are not remotely financial, and fulfillment, a sense of I work harder now than I've ever worked in my life for very little stroke negligible financial reward. That's not the motivator for me. And I think, we've mentioned Chris Tompkins and how I immeasurably respect her and her late husband's work and the team's work that work on the projects in Chile and Argentina. And she says, it's about getting up in the morning and giving over yourself or part of yourself to something other than yourself. And this is incredibly empowering. We hear it in other contexts, is giving over to other people, but actually do it, because modern world is incredibly individualistic. It's about what can I do for myself, quite frankly. And we live in an increasingly narcissistic society, which has created enormous wealth, if you like, successes. And we should never forget, obviously, the successes that we have achieved in medicine, healthcare, education, standards of living that the modern society has given us. So it's taking those things forward. But it's a sense of genuine community. It's if we work together on something, we can go further. So they say, there's the proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is so true. And so that quote in and of itself is sort of like a microcosm of economics and impact, if you like.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
talked about it, Marie Francis. If you're in the business, okay, I've got my weekly targets, I've got my quarterly targets, I've got my annual targets. Bang, let's go sprint, and then I pop out at the other end, and I've made a return on my time and effort and energy like that. And then what?
yes,
So
exactly.
it's rethinking, okay, am I part of something bigger? And am I a contributor? I can be a leader, but I can be a contributor to something that's bigger than me. And, the mountain is really, it's thinking of a different mountain. It's thinking of a mountain that you'll never finish climbing,
Yes.
with lots of smaller mountains along the way that you'll measure success. But there's no problem with never finishing the climb of the mountain, because it's a pleasure in of itself.
Yeah, I think it's Kim Thompson that says that, right? In her recent talk, she with the new discoveries, despite having protected so much land, they realize how much they need them to be connected and create
Mhm.
corridors so that life continues to sustain itself. And so they developed a new mission, and she will never see its end. But if it's not big enough, then if you can see the end of it, then it's not big enough.
That's a very a very good way of putting it. Yes, make it so big that you can never finish it,
Hmm.
or you're not in your lifetime. And we have so much work to do in, I know the science, so I'm not going to speak too much on how imperiled we are. You can look at Johann Rockstrom's planetary boundaries model and see under how much pressure we are under with the forces coming at our life systems. But to sum it all up, we are effectively in a war where we are arming our enemy. And what I mean by that is we are continuing with our emissions into the atmosphere, which are increasing greenhouse gases, which are increasing the heating of the planet, whilst at the same time disabling our defenses, which is taking away natural systems and ecosystems that sequester carbon and release oxygen. We have the greatest technologies on Earth right in front of us to help us with this challenge, and that's the natural world and intact functioning ecosystems. And we can do
Yeah.
something about it. And it
Mhm.
is interconnected. I don't feel, I think my head says one thing, but I don't wake up in the morning being distressed or anxious about it. I wake up in the morning being excited about it because
Hmm.
the potential is there and we have roadmaps already. We have shining examples and successes right there in front of us. And just as you said, Natalia, one thing is then taking, a landscape, and it's then connecting it. And one of the origins of rewilding is working around the three C's: cause, which are your core ecosystem areas, your core rewilding areas; corridors, number two; and then three is carnivores, your apex predators, to create intact trophic systems. So,
And can you share, because you've been on the ground and you've seen this happening,
mhm.
can you share a little bit what your vision is? What do you think? Yeah, can you, you share some hope with us? I guess we know we're own worst enemies, and we've studied so much all the harm we do, but you've been able to see some examples of what can be possible. So what's your vision?
Okay, so my vision is very much aligned with the global initiative of 30 by 30, protecting 30% of the world's oceans and land by 2030. In turn, we can go to 50 by 50 because I think that's what will give us resilience around the globe. It'll protect our life systems, and I feel privileged to be part of what is a movement, actually. And I never thought when I was, if I turn back the clock 20 years ago, I was in that mindset of the individual, and I'm going to do my thing, and I am doing my thing, but it's part of a bigger picture, and that's really exciting. So my vision is for a world where all life thrives. We do not need to enslave other sentient creatures. We can live in a very harmonious world, and that will bring so much joy and pleasure and wonder to us all. So, that's very perhaps ideological, but that's what I believe in.
It's beautiful to hear because I think some of the when we talk about rewilding, regeneration, one of the things that people or climate, both Natalia and I have been involved in the impact investing world, and some people take a very technology approach to climate. I think it's also about relationship, how we relate to each other in the world, and like you said, like connecting the dots between the individualism where it's all about what can I get, what can I extract out of the world,
Mm,
as opposed to what can I give, what can I offer, how I can
mm,
uh, honor and nurture what I'm part of. And the one thing I think sometimes is not spoken about enough is that that's actually where fulfillment and happiness lies. Just getting out things for yourself might get you out of scarcity and panic,
mm,
but the real flourishing of life comes from expressing, your true nature, which is your gift to the world. So when I'm hearing you connect these dots, and especially the work you do, bring people out into these nature areas and having these experiences, I'm curious if you have stories, or you could talk about what impact you see on the people and how it changes their perspective and view of their place in the natural world.
So thank you. You're making me think of something that we talk about internally at JWP. On the one hand, where people work together towards a common goal, there is immense rewards in that. So recently, there have been instances of people in North America. I believe it's the Amish who 300 people can pick up a barn and move it to the
Mm.
place where they want the barn to be. People working together. Out of 299 people, it's not their barn. It might be one person's barn or house, but they're all contributing to the well-being of the community because they know if I'm helping that person, they can help me, and so and that will benefit us all. So in terms of examples I've seen, I've given examples about the work of Doug Chris Tompkins, experiences in Europe and Africa as well. We're particularly active in supporting causes in Africa, particularly around female leadership and representation, and youth and diversity. But one of the things that we really want to do is foster stronger female voices to get more balance in society, if you like. I think women generally have a more of an innate sense of feeling their way forward in life, and that's a positive. So we did 2 trips last year to get to Africa as our flagship trips. One was to Kenya, which was around female leadership in the field and communities and welfare and so on. And then
Mhm.
the other one was to South Africa, and that was also a women-only trip led by a mother and daughter team in the Great Karoo in South Africa, who are working on rewilding an area of land that they as a family own,
Mhm.
working alongside the communities. But it's also part of a wider vision to bring back what with the vast springbok migrations and
Mhm.
animal species that have been extirpated over the decades. And so, what we do see is when we have vibrant ecosystems, it will bring back communities and welfare and jobs back into landscapes and seascapes. Where we see industrialized, extractive industries, if you like, whether it be
Yeah.
mining, agriculture, fishing, you are really taking out local communities where they are being knocked out. I mean, I'm hearing instances of where large Asian fishing fleets are working off the coast of Africa that are denigrating the available fish stocks for local fishermen so badly that is aggravating the immigration into Europe from people on the west coast of Africa who have lost their livelihoods. So it's
Yeah.
all connected with one another. So it comes back to the interconnected of all this. I mean, the sort of theme I'm obviously working to and so on. So yes, we talk a lot about nature conservation and wildlife and landscapes and so on, but at the heart of all of this is people. And
Mhm.
so it's about giving people back an identity, an agency, if you like, and learning how we can help support local people in their own enfranchisement.
Yeah. And we've seen cases where in wanting to help, we create more harm
Hmm.
because we remove locals, agency and capacity to be developing their own solution to their own problem, right? And so I wonder if you've seen that posture of stewardship, of like being with, but also supporting people finding their own ways. Have you seen that work on the ground? Have you seen the difference between, do good, imposing cookie cutter kind of solution versus, nurturing, cultivating, being with, and allowing for the emergence of whatever needs to happen in that
Definitely,
specific
I've
place?
definitely,
Yeah.
and we in addition to our executive team at Journeys with Purpose, we have a board of impact ambassadors, and so I've just recently done an interview from Family Office Foundation publication on with her. And I think she, as a next gen family member, speaks so well about this. It's about listening and learning first before about turning up and giving. And so that's one of the big things that we want to be able to do is to turn up, to listen, to learn, and to basically figure out how we can support the successes of others and local people. It's not about us coming in and saying, look at the model we've got and this is what you need to do. No, 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 no. No, that's not gonna fly. So I think listening, learning, participating, supporting, celebrating other people's local successes is how we approach it. And we are businesslike about how we approach it. I mean, we talk about measures of success and so on, aligning with a 30 by 30, building a community of change makers who, through their experiences with us, can better understand how they can affect positive impact change, whether it is in nature conservation or it is in another field of impact. We have our own commercial targets as well. We are a commercial organization. My gold standard is Patagonia. I didn't want to start a business that then had a foundation to fix what the business had broken. We want to do
Mm.
one in the same. And we talk about, aligning ourselves and partnering with protecting and restoring areas of land and seas. But we also want to put capital to work. So we have a plan to basically raise funds above and beyond philanthropic donations that are genuine impact investments that can support these local causes that we learn and verify and we want to be engaged with.
And I wonder, as you speak of investors and relationship, how do you see that needing to evolve, right? So how does the posture of the investor right now that does in a way that's quite industrialized with KPIs of success and maybe with a certain posture too of like I analyze, I decide, I deploy versus being in relationship with the ecosystem. Like what needs to shift for the investment to be more of a steward of life? Instead of like analyzing, deciding, and it's a really hard question, I guess. But
It is a really hard question because we are business-like in our approach as well, in terms of how we analyze, our measures of success. And we also live in an economic world. So we look at it through the lens of my definition of impact investments is it's not a give or a grant. It's an investment that expects a return. But what is
yeah.
that hybrid or patient return? What is the economic model that we want to help foster? It could be a technology that's deployed into impact. It doesn't have to be a direct cause on the ground, but what are the supplemental measures, or not supplemental, I should say, but what are the vital impact measures that are included within that shape that investment criteria? It could be around an element of local community welfare or whatever measures we want to have a look at. What I do know is the whole realm and theme of natural capital and natural capital as critical infrastructure is growing all the time. Because if we don't get this right, and if we don't restore our relationship with the natural world, this only has one ending, and it's pretty ugly. We've got to fix this. And again, coming back to the positive side, I see more and more people, all three of us are in powerful business networks. People are wanting to engage in this more and more, particularly the young. And that's really encouraging.
You've been in a relationship with the natural world for a long time, right? And you've seen it through the lens of, I guess, university and science, but you've also been on the ground and living it and observing it. And in studying regenerative economics, there's a lot of the stories I thought were true about nature that I had to unlearn. And actually, a lot of those were, some that were used to kind of defend our natural behavior as humans, right? Either being in competition constantly or whatever. So I'm just wondering, you who've been on the ground and have seen a lot, what stories do we tell ourselves about nature that maybe are wrong? What do we need to unlearn about nature? Yeah.
Okay, so you're making me think about a thought process, because rewilding is a lot about, it's happening on the ground, but it's actually rewilding our minds. It's thinking different.
Yeah.
And so I've had to go through this process of unlearning what makes England's green and pleasant land and realizing it's a green and less than pleasant land than I thought, because of the way we can, I can now sort of re-see it and reinterpret it. And you're making me think about this term called baseline syndrome, which is baseline syndrome is generally used to describe a period of time from when, say, I grew up. I was born in 1970, and the degradation that has occurred since then. So we need to take it back to 1970, and I remember what it was like then. But hang on, no, that's not a true safety zone, actually. You might have to go back further to look at what intact ecosystems look like, which is outside of our memory banks, our living memory banks. So we have to go back to people who are either living in those ecosystems to say, okay, how does it work, if you like? So I've had to go through a process of unlearning what I learned as I grew up about, if you like, agriculture, because the whole realm of rewilding and ecosystem restoration is at its core is sort of landscapes, wild biodiversity, but it's everything that regards our relationship with the natural world. It's down to our agriculture, it's down to our energy sources, it's down to our resources about how we build our buildings and so on. So
even our vocabulary, right? How we use the word resource. Yeah.
It's unlearning that a tidy, controlled world is a good world. An untidy, what we consider an uncontrolled, complex, messy world, is a good world when it comes to biodiversity and ecosystem.
Yeah.
Resilience.
So from control to standing in the messiness of it all, And being okay with it.
Well, it's terminology, isn't it? Is you and I both described it as messy, but for other life, it's nirvana. It's paradise.
Yes.
And because it includes all the foods they need, it includes all the diversity it needs. And so it's a lot of this is about thinking differently
Mhm.
as to what is our
Yeah.
relationship with the natural world? What is our relationship with our garden? And forget what the neighbors think. Grow your
Yeah.
grass wild. Get the
Yeah.
butterflies back in, because I can tell you, your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Green, mowed lawn without a shred of wildlife in it
Yeah.
may look great, but it's a bloody disaster, excuse me, a disaster when it comes to wildlife, and I think children find it a lot less interesting as well.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but you're reminding me of a shift that I continue to live and experience in coaching and through my transition, which is
Mm.
by letting go, messiness stops feeling like messiness, and the losing the grip of control is it's freeing and beautiful.
It is
Yeah.
liberating
Yeah.
and beautiful. Most people don't see stars in the sky anymore. Well, they certainly
Mm.
don't if you live in an urban environment. And I think, go somewhere wild, go somewhere remote. It won't be comfortable. Oh, it's likely not to be comfortable, but it will be awe-inspiring. When you look at dark skies, when you look at it, vast landscapes, when you can hear genuine silence, or you can hear, a wolf howl in the background, that is awe-inspiring. It's humbling. It makes one realize how significant and insignificant we are at the end of the day. I think it was Carl Sagan that said, at the end of the day, we're stardust. We're just stardust, and we live on this pale blue dot in the middle of nowhere. Acknowledging just how precious that is and treasured that is. And when we think about what gives us life and fulfillment, it is those relationships with ourselves, with others, with the natural world. And that's special. And let's treasure and care for it. And yeah, there are so many different layers to this in terms of what goes on inside our head, in terms of rethinking our relationship with our land and our seas, with other sentient life. It's also bound with faith as well, I think, is that
Yeah.
over the millennia, humankind has had different faiths around the world. But actually, until relatively recently, faith has always been intertwined with the natural world. And we appear to be even disconnecting that. And so we're fighting against that. I think that there is a movement. There are people that say no, whether you are strongly, of faith, or you are interested in the natural world, or whatever it is, we are now beginning to fight against that loss of our relationship with other sentient life around us. And that
Mm.
is good, powerful.
Well, that's so many pearls of wisdom you're sharing with us today. To be respectful of your time, if people are interested to learn more about what you do, where they can find you, what's the entry to your world?
Well, thank you very much, both of you. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I would love people to visit our website,
Hmm.
journeyswithpurpose.org, and you can discover more there. You can connect with me from there. But I would also ask is that travel is an incredible privilege, and it
Yeah.
is life's best education. Tread softly, tread givingly, go and enjoy, and listen to those just remarkable stories from around the world, and consider how precious our lives are and those of others. And lean in and join something that you're passionate about and believe in, and give over part of yourself to it. And the rewards will be beyond, beyond, beyond joy.
Mm.
Beyond what you expect. Yeah. And even if it sounds crazy, if you listen to your head, follow the heart, and you'll
Follow
see.
the heart. Follow the
Right.
heart. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very much.
much, Duncan. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, it
Thank
was
you.
really a great pleasure to talk to you today.